hi everyone. Very happy to be here for the new Big Cheese Weekender, so expected, and to celebrate this occasion. I didn't find better than Gilles Quillot. Gilles is with us for this session to talk about cheese and bread. Gilles is a head chef of the French Embassy for more than 20 years now, and obviously as a French Normand origin, Gilles has a passion for cheese, and he's increased his passion for cheese throughout his career, traveling throughout France and discovering the Tour de France of cheese. But obviously, the reason we are here is also because his deepest and biggest passion is actually about bread, and we know how great it matches with cheese, and we want to celebrate this, but also have a bit of a deeper understanding of how bread and cheese are similar or different in some aspects and how they match together. So very welcome, Gilles. Please tell us about how you got to bread, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Noemie, and hello, everyone. Well, I started, we always baked the bread in the French Embassy since I arrived 25 years ago. But I have to admit that from the last few years, we evolved into the way we are working. I think it's obviously with the help with the lockdown. I read a lot about bread, and it actually was extremely positive. I found out by reading few books that people are really talking about the old type of wheat, or what we would call heritage wheat, that are being replanted. And what is very interesting about heritage wheat is that it's kind of wheat that won't support any kind of chemicals in the field, meaning that it's not only organic, it's way far beyond being organic. And we are really working with the land. It's a respect of nature. And most of the time we try to work with agroforestry, which means that you have trees around the fields, and obviously all insects are back into the field. And that's very important because they are actually doing the work of the tractor. So they are making the land being a bit more airy and not very stone hard, like we can see sometimes when we go around the countryside. The second point that is very interesting about heritage wheat is, in comparison to the modern kind of wheat, the heritage wheat doesn't have any modified gluten, meaning that we're not talking about allergies in here. Allergies is a very important, and we need to be extremely careful with celiac and real allergies. But I'm more want to talk about the feeling that you may have after eating a bread, that you are a bit like with a big tummy and everything, and then you feel really stuffed because you just had a good portion of bread.
I know this sensation.
Yeah. I think we all do, especially when you go to France. You have a few baguettes because you are missing your baguette, and so no, but it's no comparison. But it's just very interesting to see how the bread's been modified, and by working with those wheats, you actually realize how modified the modern wheats are. They've been modified for food security, for all the good reasons, and also sometimes maybe for being able to walk a bit faster in the bakery. So it's absolutely not negative, and I'm not trying to oppose two ways in here. I just want to say that it is very important that we keep the security of feeding people, that we have enough wheat and everything. But this said, now that I discovered those heritage wheats, the taste is here, the digestibility is absolutely amazing, you have very different stages. So you have the farmer is very important. And then you have, when you mill the grain, is also very important for keeping all the nutrients, because there is no need to have nutrients that is coming from the field and from the land if you destroy it while you are milling it. So there is no need to do such a big job. And also after that, you have a way of doing the bread, what we call in French panification. And the panification is very important also because it is really important to work with acidity. So because the acidity will create, so we are obviously working with sour bread, as we all understood, because the sour bread or the starter that you will add into your dough will actually start to digest the bread for you. And by creating some what we call fitas, and those fitas will start to destroy the gluten. And
Okay.
so obviously the gluten, what is gluten? The gluten is the protein which are stuck together. And the idea of the baker is to mix the bread as fast and as hard as he can, so that you have a chain of protein which are stuck to each other like this. And once you have this, and if you work with fermentation, so, and once you're going to put the bread into the oven, so it's going to, the water which is inside the bread is going to open and become gas, obviously, with the heat. And because the gluten is stuck together, so it's doing like a chewing gum, and then it's starting to develop. That's why you have those modern wheat and bread, which are got a very strong gluten, and it's going to develop and make those massive bread, and with a big holes in it. If you have already a lower quantity, and if your gluten is not as strong, like in a heritage wheat, and then on top of this, you're already starting breaking what you created, the chain you created, you started to break it and to pre-digest it with a sourdough. Therefore, you can imagine that as soon as you put it in your mouth, then your digestive system will get rid of it much easier. It will be much easier for your system to digest it.
Yes, I think it's very interesting. And actually, I want to start touching a little bit of the comparison, because you mentioned a few things about the composition of the bread. You mentioned the gluten. Maybe let's get a little bit into more details of this composition. Obviously, in cheese, we have the casein, which is the protein of the cheese. And as far as I understand, the gluten will be the equivalent, really creating what makes the structure and the texture of the bread, the gluten.
Yeah.
What are the other elements that we need to consider and know about when we think about bread?
When you think about bread, so obviously, of what I know, obviously, so you're right, the protein is the gluten. And inside the gluten, you've got 3 different molecules. So you've got glutenin, glutein, and the third one that I always forget. Well, the one which is really important is the glutenin, because that's the one that is going to be, that we're going to try to create a chain from. And this is the one that is actually is not soluble into water. So that's the one who's going to stay. And the glutenin is slightly more easier to get rid of. So the thing is, when you have this, so that's what the producers of wheat that try to do those modern wheat, they really start working on gluten, because that's the one that's going to give you those massive bread. But to come back on the question, so because we have a field that is actually very well looked after, very rich, so it's going to give all the necessary nutriment to the plant to grow. And because the plant is in such a rich area, so the plant is very rich in vitamins. amino acid, and all nutrients that are actually very, very good for us.
That we will obviously find in the bread.
You will obviously find in your bread. Now, it's not that easy. Because it's not as easy because, as you can imagine, vitamins, we cook the bread we bake the bread at 250 degrees. Vitamins at 250 degrees, we're not going to have vitamins left. However, amino acids still there, and minerals are still there, and this is and also the protein are still there. And because we have that meal that is absolutely amazing, we also have some lipids because we keep the germs, which is really important. And it's what you need to understand is when we use a normal way of milling, the modern millers are getting rid of the germs. The germs, that's where the plant will start growing from when it starts germing for the following year. So meaning that this is all the energy of the plant is in the germ. So the energy, we are actually getting rid of the most nutritious part of the wheat.
Which is the lipids, which is
the germs, the lipid, and all the vitamins that are inside.
Okay.
Of it, just because there's a lot of lipid inside. Lipid, obviously, we all understand that's fat, and fat, when you leave fat in room temperature, like we all leave the flour in room temperature, well, after a few weeks, it starts to smell a bit different. It's starting to smell like an old fat, old grease.
Rancid.
Rancid, exactly, that's the word. And so therefore we get rid of it. So we don't want because we want to have a flour that we can keep on the shelf for weeks and weeks and weeks. So we are losing the most precious part of the grain. It's gone.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a shame.
Yeah. But if I summarize, we basically have the same nutrients in the bread than we have in the cheese. Obviously not the same composition, but the same generic nutrients. We have casein and gluten, we have fat and butter fat in bread and cheese. We also have vitamins and minerals. So we are already having a perfect match in terms of nutritional composition in order to give to people a better understanding of what are the varieties. Obviously we don't know them all, but you do work with some varieties. Maybe it will be nice to see what variety you work with and talk a little bit about their specificities, which would be to make the comparison once again, like our types of milk. A milk coming from the mountain, a milk coming from the pastures, from an oceanic climate, or rather a more Mediterranean climate. This would be in cheese our DNA for quality of raw materials. What is yours? What are your varieties?
My varieties, so I have Rouge de Bordeaux.
Wow.
So it's red from Bordeaux. So it's
not wine.
Sorry, no, it's not wine. I can actually show it to you.
Brilliant. Yes, because we are in Gilles' kitchen. We didn't mention it, but we do are in the French Embassy kitchen. Thank you, Gilles, for opening us your doors. And wow. So this is the Red de Bordeaux wheat variety.
Because of the war, so some farmers took some grain with them and went on the area of Bordeaux and started to plant those grains around Bordeaux, and it looks like they reacted really well and they adapt to the area. And then after the war, those farmers took those grains and brought them back around in the area of Paris, but outside of Paris in Bourse, which is really known for its wheat. And then that's how it came the name of Rouge de Bordeaux. With Rouge de Bordeaux, it's a really light crust. It's really nice, really crunchy. and because the gluten, even if it's fragile, so if you've been careful enough, so you get quite nice and airy inside of the bread, meat. And the taste is, for me, from my point of view, the taste is almost sweet, and turning. What is a bit of a shame with Rouge de Bordeaux, I have to admit, is when you open the pack, it smells of fresh almonds. For me, it's the smell of fresh almonds, but
of the wheat, the wheat.
Yes, but when you bake the bread, you don't have that same feeling. You don't have that same smell anymore. But it's very rich and sweet flavor. It's
yeah.
I love this bread.
Yeah, let me just, for those who would have the opportunity to get some Rouge de Bordeaux flour, tell you that we did do this exercise with Gilles a couple of days ago, and we found out that the sheep milk or a tom with a sweet character, mountain tom, for example, do work really well with this cheese because of the sweetness that Gilles was referring to, that we do find in tom in general, maybe especially with mountain toms, and sheep milk is giving as well this rich, butter, fat, sweet flavors and taste on the palate. And we did find out that it is a great pairing.
And what is really interesting, it's not particular to Rouge de Bordeaux, but it's for all of them. That's you work obviously with fermentation, and fermentation. I'm sure you will be happy to know that it's lactic fermentation. So the early part.
We love the lactic fermentation.
I was sure that you. So you have lactic fermentation for starting, and then as you move on, the longer you stay, sometimes people can do maybe 12, 13, 24, sometimes even 36 hours fermentation. And then the bread is starting to be more and more sour. That's why we call it sourdough in English. Even if it doesn't need to be sour to my point of view, but let's go with the word sourdough. And but the thing is, after a while, and depending of which wheat, the lacto fermentation will become acidic. So we more go on vinegar type of smell after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want a slice? So here we go. That's for you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So that was the Rouge de Bordeaux. We want obviously to share another pairing. Therefore, I'll ask you to bring up another type of wheat. Maybe just a little question as you're cutting your bread, Gilles. In terms of world production, do we know where is the biggest amount of wheat produced? Where are the spaces, the place in the world that make more special wheats? Do we have any knowledge around quality and quantity?
I think quantity-wise, Ukraine is a big producer of wheat. Russia is a big producer of wheat. Also, what is very interesting to know is France obviously is also a big producer. What is interesting to know that the bank, because all those original wheats been looked after. We didn't lose much. We lost some, but biodiversity has been looked after into some special places. And actually, the Russians are very good for keeping those wheats. So what they do is we also have a bank in France, and we keep the wheat in a fridge, and every 5 or 6 years. We plant them again, so to produce some more, and then to keep them, because the wheat is going to keep itself for quite a while, but then at one point it's going to lose its power to grow again. So it's very important. It's not only important that we're going to keep them. It's also very important to look after them, because there's one thing is every year when they harvest the wheat, what they should do is go into the field, get the best wheat they can see, pick them up, and then keep them for planting the following year. When you do this, you have something absolutely amazing that appears. Is that because you took the best wheat, so the one that's got the best color, the one that is beautiful. So therefore, you are creating not a new kind, but like a super kind of wheat. And I want to illustrate this with you regarding the einkorn, which is our next bread. So because the color is also, the more color you have, the more nutriment you will have in the flour. So therefore, when you're going to see the color of that bread is yellow. And I've never seen an einkorn like this before. Einkorn, I've seen some, completely white, normal flour, but this one is so special, and the smell is absolutely, it's just on top of me now. It's just, even if the bread has been baked this morning, the flavor is absolutely amazing. I'm going to show it to you. So this is einkorn, and I really like this flour because you don't need to work much with it, and actually you shouldn't work much with it because the gluten is really poor in gluten.
Love the sound of it.
The sound is not bad, and you can see. Look at that color.
Wow, yeah, very different from the former.
And the smell is fantastic. So,
tell us about the smell. What's made en grain what it is?
En grain, see, look. So again, this is not dense. I don't know if you can see very well. I'll try to have it. It's not dense, but it's not open either.
Yes.
See? So you can see there is fermentation.
Yeah.
It's
maybe slightly less open than the Rouge de Bordeaux, or
it is. Yeah, look at the difference. It's completely different. The texture.
Wow, yeah.
It's all because of the gluten. The gluten.
Fascinating.
Because the gluten is not the same, and
so the gluten in that case would be shorter and not have therefore.
It's just a problem of quantities and quality, depending if it's glutenin and all those different kinds. And I'll tell you the truth, it's almost a bit, it's toasted. You've got that toasted flavor, and also, again, it's quite sweet and almost like a corn kind of flavor. It's absolutely amazing, and I have to admit, I shouldn't say that. I love them all, but this is one of my preferred one, because if you look at the genetic, einkorn was here with the Natufien. So Natufien is, we are in 14,000 before Christ. Between 14 and 15,000 before Christ, and we are in Croissant Fertile, so that's around Israel, Palestine, and Jordan, and that civilization, the Natufians, were actually eating einkorn, and it's exactly the same genetic that we've got today. And I think it went through the ages for the only difference, there is still a difference anyway, is that this at the time was wild, obviously, because we couldn't farm at the time. Almost 16,000 years ago, we wouldn't farm. So it was a wild. However, this was einkorn anyway. So genetically talking, we're talking, and I think when you are eating it, when you realize, then humans 16,000 years ago were eating the same, not the same bread because it was not bread, but the same wheat. It's
raw materials.
Just crazy.
And if I may, what is even more fascinating is that obviously we know that in cheese, the origin of cheese is also Mesopotamia. It's basically the beginning of the pairing and of the association of cheese and bread.
Mm-hmm.
And what's even more interesting, and we didn't do it on purpose, we picked the goat curd or any mature goat cheese to go with the en grain. And that's fascinating to think that the goat curd is actually one of the first cheese ever made. If we look at the origin, we learned that in the level 1 of the Academy of Cheese, actually, that the first cheese ever made was made probably naturally with the action of lactic acid bacteria that went transforming the milk into a beginning of curd. And it's very not a coincidence, I'm sure, that it's also matching in terms of pairing, because I'm now heading to the next cheese that we choose. I think you have the curd on your side, Gilles. Yeah. You have a British goat curd. I have here a nice matured ashed goat cheese. So the difference will be that we have a longer process of maturation, and we do think that both of them work really well with en grain because of this this balancing the sourness. The cheese is slightly sour as well, and we have as well this sweet notes with a little bit of nutty character that we found out it goes well with the corn flavors of the en grain. So it's a historical pairing. It's probably the first pairing ever made, and we just found it in with our palate, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's really back to origins. Huh? It's very interesting.
So interesting that you're speaking about it, because I was actually going to ask you about the process. Maybe that will lead us to our last pairing, but can you give us the key step if now people who are watching at us are making their cheese at home, because they're all obviously very knowledgeable in cheese, but how can they get to be great bread bakers? What is the key processes that we need to know about?
The key element is like when you cook, it's love. You need to love what you are doing. That's the first thing. That's passion and love. That's the first thing. I'm sure in cheese is the same thing. Now, for the bread,
we all love eating it.
Yeah, we all love eating it. Yeah, but sometimes it's not enough. I think the love of sharing is also very
wow. We're getting into spirituality now.
Yeah. So so once you have your water, once you have your flour, then you need to do a first dough, and then you let it ferment. You can have a bit warm water, and you use same quantity of water than flour. Let's say 100 grams of water, 100 grams of flour. You mix, and then you let it rest for 24 hours. It should start having some little bubbles if it's a good flour.
So we now mix the water with the flour for 24 hours.
Yeah. So you let it in a warm place. It needs to be slightly warm, maybe 20, 21, 22 degrees, and you let it ferment. That's a first fermentation. And then what you do after is what we call you're going to feed. It's going to be like almost like a companion that you're going to feed, and you need to feed it every day. And so after those 24 hours, you're going to feed him. So you've got 200 grams, 100 grams of flour, 100 grams of water. You're going to feed him. So we've got 200 grams. You're going to add 200 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. So it's going to be a bit more a harder dough. And then you're going to ferment it for 12, 13 hours at room temperature again. and then and so on and so on, and you do it 5 times. Yeah. Obviously, you can reduce the quantities because after that you're going to have a large quantity of starter. But you need to do it at least 5 times the first week, and then once you have this, so you're going to have a very strong and healthy starter. And every time you feed him, you cut the time by half. So you start by 24, 12, 6, and 3 hours. And once you reach 3 hours, if it doubles up, then you're ready to do some bread.
Okay, so then we've got our final dough.
Yes.
And
then it's done.
Straight away?
Then it's done. No. We're not there yet. Hold on.
So another common point with cheese making is to be patient.
Need with bread, and you know what? The thing is, the bread is not you decide. It's the dough. The bread will decide when it's ready to be baked. If you want to rush the process, you're not going to do anything nice, anything good.
Do you actually follow pH or any indicators like you do in cheese?
Yes, I work with a pH meter. Yeah, I work with pH meters because I try to be as regular as possible because because of the French embassy, you still want to produce every day, not the same thing because it's just impossible, but to be close as the same thing every day. And well, the environment is completely different. The water might be slightly different. The temperature is completely different. The atmospheric pressure is completely different also every day. So it's all those variables that you need to work with. So I have a tendency of checking the pH in every process. Once it's needed, once the dough is mixed, I check the pH just to see. Usually it's always the same. And then because you need to give 1 hour and a half, hold on, you need to give at least 2 to 2 hours and a half of first fermentation at room temperature. And this is very important for me because I know that depending of which kind of wheat I'm using, I know that there's some wheat that will go down. I think before the long fermentation, like the first short fermentation, I should lose 0.5 point of pH. I will let it set down in a fridge at about 7-8 degrees for 12 hours, and then I would lose a point of pH. The idea is that I should bake the bread when the pH is at 4.2, roughly.
Wow! So yeah. we're really similar to cheese. And just to achieve the bread making, what would be the last step before baking?
The last step before baking, once all the fermentation is done, so we arrive in the morning and you have your bucket of dough. That is actually quite beautiful to see. You can see that it rised a bit, and then you need to carefully take it off because we have like plastic containers, so you carefully take it off the plastic container. It's a whole process because you don't want to break the fermentation, so you don't want to break the bubbles that took you 14 hours to create. So you really want to,
this also remind me how when you mold the curd, you need to do it in some cheese families, like the soft cheese, for example. You need to do it very carefully because you don't want to break the curd that you so carefully coagulated, and some curds are very delicate. So that's another similarity.
Yeah, it seems to be very similar. The thing, what you need to do, so you have, it's very delicate because you don't want to lose the fermentation that took you so long, But also you need to, because as I explained earlier, what did the fermentation do is give some sourness to the dough. The sourness helps creating fitas, and the fitas, I remind you, will actually start cutting the line of gluten. So what you need to do, you need to restretch slightly the gluten by pulling the dough.
Ah, that's why.
That's why. So that's why and that's when you give the shape of the bread. Otherwise, it would be very flat. So you need to give a bit of tension to the to recreate a bit of chain of the gluten. So for the bread to hold together. So once you've got this, because you broke a bit of fermentation, so you need to gain more fermentation again. So you put it in whatever shape you've done. You either put it in a cloth, or you can put it also in a basket, in a special basket, and you let it cook for 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on the temperature, and then it's ready to be baked. And once you've got this, then you bake it in the oven. But you need to have an oven, preferably that would heat from the bottom as well as from the top. So because if you have a heat from the bottom, so it will help the bread to rise. And also you need to add a bit of steam inside the oven. So it's going to help you to have that nice brown color. And then you need to bake it for quite a while, because it's
so the crust is also getting better thanks to the steam, or it's just the color?
It's also getting better because of the steam. It's I don't know, in bakery we call it Maillard reaction. So I don't know if Maillard was French, but reaction Maillard, and that's what the steam will do.
Et voilà. Thank you very much, Gilles, for sharing with us your secrets.
However, exactly finish.
Exactly, I know. We have another pairing.
No, but even for baking the bread, once it's finished, you need to take it out and to put it in a grill. It needs to rest for at least 1 hour and 2 hours. And what is very interesting with heritage wheat, and if you do it with the starter, is the following day the taste is completely different. Some people might even prefer it the following day.
Really?
Don't eat warm bread. This is not obviously this is not good for digestion, and also this is not good for developing of all the aroma of the bread.
We need to wait again. Waiting again.
You need to wait at least 3 to 4 hours minimum, and preferably you need to wait the following day, because there the flavor is completely open, and the difference is absolutely amazing.
And just because in honor of time, we want to keep our last pairing, provide the last pairing that we promised. And I actually talked about blue cheese. We have the Bleu d'Auvergne as a nice example. Can you just say a few words about this flour?
Voilà.
Okay, so what is this? What is this one?
This one is Maitre. What we call Maitre is a mix of wheat and rye in the same field. So it's not like I have some flour of wheat, I've got some flour of rye, I'm going to do 50-50. No, it's not like that. It's one field.
Natural. It's natural.
Natural is one field where you have actually some rye and some wheat. The idea, and I really like this bread, because it's actually originated, the first time we heard about Maitre, the word Maitre is coming from just after the French Revolution. And because we all understand it was a lot of different issues that bring to the revolution, but one of the main issues was the quality of the bread that was really poor at the time. And actually, the rich would have white bread, and the poor would have dark bread. Dark bread being actually just the outside of the skin of the wheat being mixed some kind of flour, and as some kind of flour, and they would do some kind of bread with it, and it had to be very heavy and very not very interesting. So the quality of the bread was really bad. That brought to the revolution. And one of the first promises after the French Revolution was that the bread will be the same for everybody. So that's the bread of equality, and that was Maitre. And Maitre is, the idea of Maitre is very simple. We put rye and wheat in the same field, and we see what happens. And depending on the weather during the year, so either the wheat will take over the Maitre, the rye, or the rye will take over the wheat, depending on the weather. And the first time we heard of this bread of Maitre was in 1792. So just after the French Revolution, and it was the idea of having equality front of the bread, meaning that it was the bread for the poor and the rich. So this is a bit denser bread, just because there's rye in it, so the fermentation is there, and it's actually very tasty. And as you said earlier, because we actually work with rye, and because the rye being part of the, see when you see, it's not that dense. You still have quite good fermentation, and the smell again is absolutely amazing.
But we did agree that blue cheese of any type, it worked very well with the Bleu d'Auvergne. But we also tried it with Roquefort, the Roquefort Papillon as well, reminding a bit the story. It's matching very, very nicely with this wheat, and also in the pairing and in the tasting, it's always nice to finish with this because it will be the most intense aromatically, but also in the mouth. So it's nice to finish with this pairing, and that's also why we decided to finish this session with this recommendation, the Maitre and blue cheese, French blue cheese for our recommendation, directly coming from the French Embassy kitchen. So you should trust it. Thank you very much, Gilles. It was fascinating. I don't know what word to use, but I think this is just the beginning. When we talk about cheese, we obviously want to melt it in his gastronomic family, and the bread is definitely indispensable, I would say, cheese partner. And this is one of the first time that we are actually bringing it to the table, and I hope, and I'm pretty convinced that there will be many more. So thank you very much, Gilles, for sharing so generously your passion.
And next time we do it in real, so we can taste at the same time.
Yes, and why not somewhere in London, in any location, and inviting you guys to join us for the tasting.
Anytime.
Thank you very much, Gilles. Au revoir, à bientôt.
Au revoir.
Merci.